Hello students, welcome back to the science class with me, Miss Jessica. So today we are going to learn about the nucleic acid and lipid. So without further ado, let's begin our lesson. First, let's talk about lipid. Lipid is a group of the hydrophobic biomolecules that plays an important role in living organisms. Well, the primary functions of the lipid is being the long-term energy storage, but lipid is also used for the protections, insulation, and lubrications. Lipid are also placed as the precursor for some hormones and are the key components of the cell membrane. There are four basic groups of lipids, which are the triglycerides, the phospholipids, the steroids, and the waxes. Although these four groups of lipids may differ in many aspects, but they all have common things that they are insoluble in the water. You may have noticed that the lipid and the water do not mix. For example, like the yellow color oil in the beaker of the water shown in this picture. So, even if you stir them for several minutes, even for several hours, the oil simply will still do not mix it with water, or they are separate from the water. This is because lipid is hydrophobic. So the prefix hydro in Latin means water, while the phobic means fear of. So when you hear that the lipid is hydrophobic, it simply means that the lipid cannot mix with the water. Let's take a closer look at the first group of the lipid, which is the triglycerides. Triglycerides consist of fats and oils. Fats is solid and room temperature, and they are used by the animals for the protections, lubrications, and the long-term energy storage. While oil is liquid at the room temperature. They are used by the plants for the long-term energy storage. At molecular level, triglycerides contain of two subunit molecules, which are cholesterol and fatty acids. Now let's take a look at the fatty acids. Fatty acids have three main parts, which are a chain of hydrogens and carbon atoms, which we call as hydrocarbon chain. Second, a methyl group at one end, and the third one is an acid group at the other end. Fatty acids can be saturated or unsaturated. A fatty acid that has only single carbon-to-carbon bond is known as saturated fatty acid. This is because the carbon chain is saturated with all the hydrogens that it can hold. While for the unsaturated fatty acids has one to several double bonds. These double bonds result in the kinks in the fatty acid chain, and it will affect the melting point of the fats. Animal fats are saturated fatty acids, and they are solid and room temperature. While for the vegetable oils, they have one to several double bonds, and they are liquid in the room temperature. Let's talk about the second group of the lipid, which is the phospholipid. So, phospholipid is similar to the triglycerides that they contain cholesterol and two fatty acids. What's the difference is that the phosphate group, rather than the third fatty acids, is attached to the third carbon of cholesterol. Phospholipids are extremely important because they have unique properties in regards to the water. The phosphate head of the molecule is hydrophilic or water-loving, which means that they mix well with the water, while the fatty acid tails is hydrophobic, which means that they do not mix well with the water. Because of these unique properties, phospholipids tend to arrange themselves so that the phosphate head will only interact with water, while the fatty acid tails will curl inwards away from the water molecule. And phospholipids, they are important component of the plasma membrane of the cells. Now let's talk about the third group of lipid, which is the steroids. Steroids compose of four fused carbon, which is the different functional group are attached to them. One of the most well-known steroids is cholesterol. Cholesterol serves as the precursor for the synthesis of the other steroids such as the testosterone, estrogen, vitamin D, and cortisons. The cholesterol that present in the plasma membrane, it stabilizes the membrane, while the hormone like the testosterone and estrogen, they only have a small difference in their functional group, but they have a large difference in their effect to the organisms. Let's talk about the last group of lipid, which is wax. Wax is non-polar and they repel to water. So wax can be found in the protective coats in the plants or the other surface of the animals. So wax are produced in the ears to protect the eardrums. And for additions, the bees construct the honeycombs from the wax. Nucleic acid. Nucleic acids is a group of biomolecules that is found in all living organisms and they use to store the genetic information. Nucleic acid is also used to produce the proteins. Nucleic acid made of the monomers, which we call it as nucleotides. Nucleotides has three components, which are the 5 carbon sugars, or we call it as ribose, a phosphate functional group, and a nitrogenous base. A DNA, the 5 carbon sugar is deoxyribose, while for the 4 nitrogenous base are adenine, guanine, cytosines, and thymine. DNA is composed of 2 strands that is arranged as right-handed helix. So these strands are antiparallel, meaning that they are orientated to the different directions. So these 2 strands are held together by the hydrogen bonds. So the cytosines will form hydrogen bonds with the guanine, while the adenine form hydrogen bonds with the thymine. So this complementary pairing of bases will link the 2 strands together, and this displays an important functions in the replications of DNA molecule. Besides DNA, there are the other types of nucleic acid, which is RNA. RNA differ from DNA because first they contain the ribose sugar instead of deoxyribose. Second, they contain a nitrogenous base uracil instead of thymine. RNA usually is single-stranded and it doesn't form a helix. Because of this, they are less stable and they are temporary. So DNA are used to store the information to produce the proteins, while RNA functions in regulating these informations in the protein synthesis process. That's all about our lesson today. Don't forget that we are going to have a small test on the 4th meeting, and don't forget to do the exercise and the skill assessment on Edmonda. See you next meeting!